Video editing is an essential part of creating in the visual medium. The ability to sequence together two separate scenes in a movie is what brings life to the story being told. We can often take for granted the systems that we have today that allow us to make movie magic, and those systems have made things easier than ever. A lot of your standard editing practices done today are just a click and drag, but the origins of cinema in the 1890s involved a lot more work. Before video cameras existed, early filmmakers like brothers Augusta and Louis Lumiere shot their footage using a cinematograph, an early movie camera that required the use of film rolls in order to work. If these film rolls were damaged, so was your footage, so it was extremely important to protect your film in the event of an accident. After finishing their film session, filmmakers would take their rolls and physically cut them up to trim any excess footage, then glue it to another roll of film to create early movie scenes, making what's called a rough cut, which is still a term used today to refer to the initial version of your movie. Film editing was in its infancy, so much so that editors were simply called cutters. If a cutter couldn't trim the footage with precision or made a mistake, the scene was essentially ruined unless a backup existed. The order of shots was crucial, as even a small change could completely alter the meaning of a scene. This meant that cutters had a huge responsibility to get it right the first time. To make things even trickier, film rolls were difficult to see, making errors all too easy. Imagine watching Empire Strikes Back, and just before Darth Vader reveals he's Luke's father, the scene just...
No.
At the time, editing involved so much guesswork that filmmaking was largely inaccessible to newcomers, and it definitely wasn't sustainable. That is, until the invention of the Moviola, the first video editing machine. What made the Moviola so influential in video editing history was its streamlined nature in editing workflows. If you didn't have the mechanical skill to cut your footage accurately with scissors, the Moviola would do that part for you. You still had to determine where the best place to cut between scenes should be, but the Moviola's display meant that you could physically see your own footage before you cut it, making accurate cuts
I am your father.
easier than ever. Naturally, this increased the quality of films dramatically, and directors started getting more and more fame from their work, such as Orson Welles. In fact, Welles was known to be quite obsessed with his own personal Moviola, and he used it for many of his films, including Citizen Kane, one of the most prestigious movies ever made. While the Moviola and its counterpart, the Steenbeck, were highly regarded for its ease of use and advanced technology, there were still limitations in flexibility. To elaborate, the Moviola and the Steenbeck are what's referred to as linear editors, meaning that they could only edit sequentially. Changing your edits after making them meant that you'd have to start over, as these editing machines were only designed to move forward in your footage, never backwards. NLEs, or nonlinear editors, evolved the design principles of editing to allow for an editor to bounce back and forth throughout their movie, making changes as needed. You didn't have to start over if you realized you cut a scene too soon or let a scene drag on for longer than what was needed. You'd think a device so useful in the filmmaking process would just be everywhere, right? Well, the first nonlinear video editor was called the CMX600, and it sold for $250,000, and only 6 units were ever manufactured. It was considered a successful device, but it was the first of its kind. Not only was it the first NLE, but it was also the first computer-powered video editor, storing all of its data digitally, so no need to keep backups of film in a dark room. Suddenly, editors weren't bound by the order of their footage. They could rework entire narratives in post-production, changing the film's pacing, structure, or even meaning. However, there were drawbacks. The 6 massive drives needed for storage were each the size of a washing machine, yet they could only hold 39 megabytes of storage. That's about the equivalent of 5 PS2 memory cards. This could work for the time, but the industry was shifting in the early 60s with the focus on quality, and the invention of home cassettes meant that more and more people were being exposed to movies outside of theater releases. Quality, while always important to filmmakers, was becoming a larger focus with so many eyes interacting with new media, and higher quality meant larger file sizes, something the technology at the time just couldn't support. As time went on, technology started getting sophisticated. Computer processors were smaller and faster and could do much more. Having a computer in the house was becoming more common, and these computers were powerful enough to run emerging editing softwares from the early 2000s, like Apple's Final Cut Pro, Adobe's Premiere Pro, Sony's Vegas Pro. A lot of pro. Anyway, there were a lot of options to choose from. This video you're watching now was shot digitally, editing using Adobe's Premiere Pro and After Effects, and they're both so powerful that you could practically do anything. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like and subscribe for more brain-boosting content, and why not continue learning the smart way by following us on all of our socials at Smart Cookies. My name is David Penta, and thanks for watching.
This program was produced by ZTV at the University of Akron. Do you want to gain experience in video production, professional social media, or working with real clients? Visit the UA School of Communications online or follow us on social media to learn more. ZTV, make media, make a difference.